Hello, everybody. Welcome to Millie Chan TV. Today, this conversation is going to be a little bit different from what I usually do when I come live. I felt like this was an important conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to be had by people who can really lead us in the right direction. I have here Too Raw, Too Real. He is an excellent um, influencer. He's very political. He's very versed in it. To Double D Mother, we all know and love her, and she is probably our most problematic. And we have
She's our most
Elder
black
That
Saki.
girl.
would be him over here. That's Ken.
and, then, and then we have Elder Saki, and she, like me, she's a influencer and an entertainment blogger. And Elle and I do a lot with just reviews and things like that. But we do feel like we have a voice and we want to reach people. Then we have Zactivist. Did I say that right, Zach? He is
Yeah,
versed as
Zachary Curd.
well, and
Zachary.
he okay, and his take is amazing. So, and our final guest today is Trey Baker. Um, Trey is my brother, but he is very connected to this conversation that we're going to have today. He was a former employee of the White House. He had a very big hand in getting Joe Biden to become the president, and now he's going to be working with them in this election year. So I felt like to start this conversation off, and I hope I can have others. I felt like we needed him here today just to get us in the know and get us started. So, hello everyone, and thank you all for being here.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
So I wanted to do this because my friend is here. I was talking to her, and we were talking about after Trump was found guilty, and she was saying, I don't know if we have an option. So when she said that, I was like, yes, we have an option. It's not the option that's guilty. We just have to have another option. So this is why I formed this today. I reached out, and Tiffany helped me reach out, and I appreciate that so much. And so I'm going to let Trey just kind of tell us a little bit. And Tiffany has said that she feels like, we need to know how government works. So we're going to talk about that. So Trey, you can have the floor.
Yeah, well, Mill, I appreciate you for having me on, and thank you to all the panelists today for having me and for having this conversation, because it's so important that we have this conversation in this particular space. Just by way of introduction, my name is Trey Baker. I am from Grenada, Mississippi, where I grew up as Millie Chun, as my big sister, and also our sister Melanie grew up there. And, we came from parents who really gave us a solid foundation of right and wrong. And so I think this conversation comes down to a lot of that, and a lot of politics just comes down to that. And I think we'll get into a bunch of that today. But just by way of background, from Grenada, went to Tougaloo College undergrad, where I not only got into political science, but also pledged the greatest fraternity on earth, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Shout out to the Noops. And but from there, I met Congressman Benny Thompson, who became a mentor and friend. You would know him from being the chairman of the January 6th Commission. And, working in his office and working for him really got me started in politics. Ultimately, I went on, started practicing law, became the city manager in Grenada, Mississippi. So I was the executive for our hometown. So I've worked at every level of government, from Congress to the White House to local government. But after that, I went on to become the National Director of African American Engagement for Joe Biden in 2020. So I led this national effort for Black voter engagement, and then went into the White House as a senior advisor to the president for public engagement. Post that, became a consultant and partner in a law firm. And then now I just came back and I'm a senior advisor to the Biden-Harris reelection campaign. And so I'll be doing a lot of digging in on the Black community, trying to make sure that people understand, what the Biden-Harris administration has done for our community, I think it's a valid question that people ask and say, what has Joe Biden done for us? And I think it's up to the administration and up to folks like me who are campaign people or who are consultants to the campaign to express that to everybody out there. So, so today I look forward to having a conversation and bringing out a couple of things. One, just the historic nature of what the Biden-Harris administration has done, whether it be student loan debt forgiveness, whether it be infrastructure improvements across the country, whether it be housing, or anything that's beneficial to our community. And then also just the sheer importance of people going out to vote. Neil relayed that story to me about her friend who said, that we don't have any choices. One, I don't believe that to be true. But two, I started cussing. I'm not going to do that today because this is somebody who also grew up with us and also knows that I work for this man and talking about we ain't got no choices. Well, you got a choice to support Trey, but me and Neil's friend will discuss that later on.
She's here.
She there? Okay. Tell her me and her got to talk when we get done with this. Because
Okay.
just the sheer, your friend's brother works for the man. Okay, anyway. I just think it's important that we understand that we do have a choice here. We have a choice between, and I won't get too much on bumping about Donald Trump on this podcast, but we got a choice between a convicted felon who we know to have a history of animus towards the Black community, a convicted felon who did nothing to help advance Black people's lives during his time in office. We have a convicted felon who, mishandled COVID-19 and everything that had to do with it, versus somebody who's a statesman who has this set of accomplishments for us, who was the vice president to the first Black president, the person who appointed the first Black female vice president, the person who put the first Black woman on the Supreme Court, the person who has appointed more than 30 Black female federal judges in his time in office, the person who has Marsha Fudge as the HUD secretary, the person to appoint the first Black secretary of defense, the person who has all throughout his, including me, Black people appointees who recognize and understand the plight of our community and has demonstrated an effort to try to help the community. So you give me those two choices, and I'm with Mill's friend. We don't have a choice. We got one choice, and that's this person over here. And this is Joe Biden and this is Kamala Harris. And so I am more than happy to stand on that record and talk about it, because I think there's a record for us to say, and I think we have to be aggressive in touting it to other people. So with that said, that's my opening spiel, but I look forward to the conversation with you.
Millie, if I could just say one thing, because your brother mentioned Grenada, Mississippi, and I'm also a Mississippi native. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say that my personal hero in all things that I do is Fannie Lou Hamer. And it was on this day that today, like, is the anniversary of when Fannie Lou Hamer returned from a voting rights education class and experience in South Carolina back to Winona, Mississippi, which of course is close to Grenada. And she was promptly arrested, beaten within an inch of her life, and jailed for just simply getting educated on how to help Black people in Mississippi learn how to vote. And so when we think about the fact that Trey is here, a graduate of Tougaloo, that you are here, that you are advocating for and fighting for democracy, you are doing what our ancestors were doing and continuing to push forward. But there's so many people in our home state, in our native land, who gave up a long time ago. So when we think about why is Mississippi a red state when it has the highest population per capita of Black people, it is those types of tragedies and things that could happen to Fannie Lou that every Black person remembers. Every Black person has a family member who was impacted or by that. People who are dead, people who lost land, people who had all types of horrible things happen. We have a responsibility to Fannie Lou and the ancestors to do exactly what we're doing here today, and that's pushing forward. And I'm excited to be a part of the conversation. And someone said we need to put an end to inflation, that this shit is ridiculous. Well, Justine, those are some of the things I hope we get to talk about to really clarify some main points about what President Biden has done to help that, although he's not responsible for it, like the Inflation Reduction Act, which is creating thousands upon thousands of jobs all across the country. So with that being said, I'm excited to be here, Billy, and I just had to throw that in about Fannie Lou to give her honor and homage on this day.
I want to ask everybody here. In a world where some people who are a little bit versed in politics, some more than others, we can run down these stats of all of the good that the Biden administration has done. But how do you think we connect with the people who mimic sentiments similar to Sexy Red? Well, I was getting checks when Biden was in office. And again, people who understand politics understand why that was not helpful to our overall economy. But the one thing that I do think that Trump does really well is him and his team understand social media, and they understand these celebrity endorsements. And so they get people who mirror conversations that so many people are having in private when the mics go off. They mirror conversations of people who are facing these $4,000 rents at apartments when jobs aren't paying that. How do you think we communicate to that subsection of people? Because that represents a large number of people who aren't feeling like they need to vote.
I'll say very briefly. I know Kenny. I'm gonna let you take it. I knew you were gonna. This is going to Kenny because this is Kenny's bag. I'm just gonna say we fight it with the truth. Donald Trump gave you no checks. Donald Trump's name went on checks that were put forth by the Democratic legislation that was drafted in Congress, passed by the Democratically controlled Congress, and pushed forward by them. Every Republican in Congress voted no on those checks. Donald Trump had no choice but to let it go through because when it was passed, he didn't take credit for it, and that's what they do. All of us, everyone who's on this live, whether you are a panelist or you're watching, you have a responsibility to be well researched and to share the truth when you see it and know it. Kenny?
I repeat the same sentiment. But as far as pushing back on that, we need to just snap people back to reality. Oop, there goes gravity. We need to bring people back to reality and what's going on. It's funny that people will sit here and say that I was doing better under Trump 4 years ago. Is that really? Just literally, May 25th, 2020, cities were on fire. People were on unrest. They were literally shooting peaceful protesters with rubber bullets. We lost, I don't know, nearly 500,000 people due to Trump's mishandling of COVID. Are we not back outside? How many people are constantly wearing masks? 71% of adults are fully vaccinated, thanks to the Biden-Harris administration. How can you sit here and say that you are better off? Like you were better off under Donald Trump than you were under Biden right now. Are we in the same place we were 4 years ago? No, we have to bring up the facts, and we have to because I think people have short attention spans or memory loss altogether. Because I think a lot of people are still dealing with untreated trauma of a Trump presidency to where we're not able to appreciate where we've come thanks to the Biden-Harris administration.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Let me just say this little piece. I think that sometimes, I'm not saying everybody in here, I'm not saying everyone, but I think sometimes people feel like, okay, I voted for the president. Okay, I have a woman of color. She's the vice president. Now do the job. But if you have a Republican Senate and House, the president's hands are tied. So when people are out here saying, do your local voting, vote for your congressman. In Texas, Governor Hot Wheels, we ready for him to go. But it's like, I don't know what goes on at the poll. I don't know what happens, but I don't know if people really, really, really understand that if you have a Democratic president, you want the Democratic majority. And I just think some people just don't understand it. And then they feel like they've done their job to vote, but now I've done my job, so do your job.
But they only vote every 4 years when they're supposed to be voting every year, and that's where the problem lies. A lot of people sit here and thinking I can put it all on the president. They think that President Biden is some sort of dictator when a lot of the things that's happening, the power is with Congress. That's where it all starts from. We have 3 branches of government, 3 checks and balances. It doesn't end with the president, but if people want a dictator, if you let Trump get in office, that's what we're going to get.
Absolutely. And, what y'all have touched on is so important that people just understand the history of it all. I even go back to, let's go back to the stimulus checks. So the stimulus checks were actually broken down. That is an excellent point about the Democratic Congress actually pushing them through. People, for some reason, don't remember that, only a portion of the stimulus checks came out under a Trump administration. We did the other 2/3 of the stimulus checks at the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration. And so actually, those checks that came out were a function of Democrats in Congress, and subsequently, most of it was the Biden-Harris administration that did it. And that's the thing, is that there has been so much to get done, given the fact that we've had these close numbers in Congress. The vice president has broken more ties in the Senate. You know, she's the president of the Senate. She's broken more ties than anyone in history, which has led to the bipartisan infrastructure plan, which has led to the American Rescue Plan, which has led to the Inflation Reduction Act, and all of the subsequent acts that could have happened. We would have had George Floyd Justice and Policing. We would have had the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We would have been able to pass the comprehensive portion of the student loan debt forgiveness if it wasn't for 2 Democratic defections in the Senate. So all of that it is like a great accomplishment that we have to make sure that people understand. And I think we have to walk back through and let people remember, because I think you made a great point that we were clouded during COVID-19. Like, we don't hardly even remember those 2 years almost of our lives at that point in time. And so a lot of folks are romanticizing something that wasn't at a different time, when really, people are put in a better position now in this day with Joe Biden as president than we would ever. And I think the other thing, it's hard to influence people on something that hasn't happened yet. Like, oh, it's going to be so bad, it's going to be this or it's going to be that. But just from what Donald Trump has told us that he's going to do, whether it be abolishing Schedule F of, and Schedule F is what makes people become career appointees within the federal government. So all of this infrastructure you see with DC being Chocolate City, that's because Black folks in DC had these good government jobs, and they can't be fired from them just because they're in one political party or the other. That will be undone in a Trump presidency. And so you have communities like PG County, Maryland, and people who come from Arlington, Virginia, and other places who will be undercut by a Trump administration. And that's just the beginning. The judiciary has, been overturned by Trump. If you want to start talking about a woman's right to choose what to do with her body, if you want to talk about contraception, that's all going to come before the Supreme Court. And right now there's a 6-3 majority, 3 of those justices who were appointed by Donald Trump and are doing his bidding. And then if Trump was to be back in office, he would probably get another 2, if not 3 appointees during the next term in the court. And so it's not light, and it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. But we have to find ways of breaking through, and conversations like this are part of that talk, and then investing in conversations like this from a time perspective and from a financial perspective from the campaign is the next step of the things that we have to do.
Let me hear from Tiffany. I'm ready to know she has some things to say.
I told you guys I really wanted to kind of dive into people not understanding how government works, because I don't think that people really understand the importance of voting on your local and state level, and how a lot of the things that they're seeing are being done on the local and state level, and these rights are not being able to be protected on the federal level, because we have a Republican-led House, which that will not bring those bills, write those bills, bring those bills, and pass those bills. There's a lot of onus that is put on the president, and we understand that, because he's the person that we hear from. He's the person that we see a lot. But at the end of the day, he's not responsible for every single thing. We need to vote every single year, because this is when you're seeing these people that are coming up in for the Senate or for the House and for these local levels, like your judges, your governors, and things like that. If you do not exercise your right to vote every single year, in my opinion, you don't have a reason to sit here and complain. Okay? You need to exercise your right to vote every single time. Do you know how many times I volunteer to drive people to the polls? Each and every single time we have voting, you have to do those things. But it's important that we understand that there's a separation here that people don't get. Joe Biden is not responsible for every single thing. He has to have a Congress that's willing to work. And what are we seeing right now? We have complete chaos in the House of Representatives, and we can also go over to the Senate. We're seeing them hold weeks and months long hearings on social media. on COVID, attacking Dr. Fauci. These
Yes.
are things that, these are things that we shouldn't be seeing, because there's a lot of things that we need to be working on for that are for your interest. And if your Congress isn't working on those things, then you need to be making your way to that ballot box and making sure you get them out. Because at the end of the day, that's what's really important. Voting, exercising your right, and that um, understanding how government works. Y'all really need to work on that expeditiously. That's my point.
Well, we say that we need to work on understanding how government works. Majority of human beings between the ages of 18 and 29 are siding with the Democratic Party, but they are also spewing the sentiments that, again, they don't feel reached socially. So in a world where we come from seeing like rock the vote campaigns and all of that, my question again is, how do we talk to younger kids? And saying do the research to an 18-year-old is kind of like telling them to go rebuild the White House. Statistics show us over and over again that they are 9 times out of 10 going to vote in the same manner that their parents vote, whether that is beneficial to them and their autonomy as a human being or not. And the stats also show that voting isn't going to change roundabout until they are in their own household. How many presidents have they voted in at that point? Also in a position where buying a house and running your own household is now becoming a thing of the past for people in that 18 to 29 age market. We've seen social media, quote unquote, campaigns where the "We Did It, Joe" is so effective and so wide moving. Again, how do we talk to the people who aren't going to do the research?
Us. We're the reason why. It literally, so the
Exactly.
onus is on us. If we sit here and say that we care about these issues and we care about moving these agendas and advocating, we need to use our platform like I've been doing for the last 5 years now consistently. But however, I also have to bring it back to Joe Biden and Democrats as well. We need a platform. And it's more than just a platform. We need our own media. Why is it that Republicans have their own media and we do not? There are so many echo chambers where it allows Republicans to continue to strategize and organize in order to strip our rights away from us. And I have not seen that same type of energy come from the Democratic Party, unfortunately. So
Agreed.
I've
Yeah, I
been
want to echo
screaming this
that, Sir Kenny.
from the top of the mountaintops for the last 4
Mi-
years. We still haven't gotten any answers
Yeah.
from it because apparently we can't.
Millie Chan and Double D with the Black Red News, and these are platforms on social media that reach a large number of progressives, liberals, and black voters. They should be funded. Like in the same way that you have Turning Point USA and all of these huge, massive conservative groups that funnel money into conservative causes, we need to have money put into these types of platforms so that they can grow and that they can continue to increase their reach. Candace Owens did not get a platform with her lack of education all by herself. That was given to her by conservative money and conservative wealth. There's
Yeah.
no reason that Millie Chan and the Black Red News and the work that we do, Kenny and I, should not have the exact same level of funding to do this work by progressive. So that's wanting to, echo what Kenny just said and explain to you how it needs to happen. All the money can't keep going to like the campaigns who really made themselves not even know how to use and leverage social media. A lot of you're putting the money, you're giving the money to the, we talk about Hill Harper, to the Hill Harper campaign, right? Hill Harper may or may not know how to leverage social media to reach young audiences, but Millie Chan and Double D Mother do. That's where more funds need to be placed.
Yeah, and you're so right. And really, I wanted to do this today. Me and Neil have talked about this. I came on here to prove a point, and to prove a point to the campaign and to other folks in the infrastructure is that our campaign and the way we do it has to catch up with where people are, right? And so we have to then go meet people where they are, and people are not in the sort of linear box of television, yard sign, radio promotion anymore. You have to get out of that box. You have to understand that day is done. And people are out here listening to long form conversations. They're listening to podcasts. They're listening to, just small hits on TikTok or other social media platforms. And so I will say that our campaign is committed to that. We are working right now on a major sort of partnership with both groups and on the paid media side that we should be rolling out soon. But we want to come to mediums like this in order to talk to the people who need to be spoken to, because you have to get like it's hard for us to get through the comments, right? Like it's hard for us to get through the bots and the other things in order to tell people what's going on and to make these statements and to really be aggressive in the way we push back on Trump and on this conservative. I don't know. They have they're able to lift every message no matter what. We call that earned media on this side, is that, you know, you're not paying for anything. They're basically taking it and doing the work for you. And we need more of that, but also that comes with having a compelling message and making sure that we give people the resources and the information that they need to be able to take it once they do have the resources. Like it's become time out that we, you know, give walking around money to, whatever organization here or there who claim they're doing voter outreach or voter education, but are really pocketing it for themselves. And so we're looking to reach past that and into organizations that really are out here doing substantive work. So I take that directly from you, and I'll take it directly into the campaign.
Absolutely.
Do you guys think that like the antics of Marjorie Greene Taylor are hurting young voters in our democracy?
In a parent's eyes.
There was all kinds of leads coming in. We were looking at everybody. Everybody was looking at it.
When did someone?
Oh.
It's a documentary. But do you think that antics like that hurt young voters who already feel like our democracy is antiquated, this is ridiculous? I know when the Fauci hearing was happening, and Marjorie Greene Taylor refused to address Dr. Fauci as doctor. She had her outburst there, and then afterwards she had her outburst to the media outlet. And a lot of the comments on that main page were, again, young kids. This is why I don't vote. I believe this is what politics really looks like. This is what we're voting for. Do you think like that antics like those are hurting just democracy as a whole?
I think that anybody who is listening to Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to listen to Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't think that there's anybody that's coming from the outside and looking at anything that Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing is like, ooh, I want to be a part of that. Oh my God. The people who lift up those type of things, they're already frump and dump voters. There ain't no changing that, in my opinion. I'm sorry I said frump and dump. I can't help it. It slips out sometimes. But I don't think that anybody that is listening to Marjorie Taylor Greene is somebody that we're trying to sway either or way.
Right.
Because if you're impressed by the way that she's acting, in my opinion, you're already too far gone. Okay, we can't dissuade you to do
well,
anything.
Not impressed, but disheartened with her antics of, again, this is why, see how she acts, this is why I don't vote, because this is what happens back there.
Right.
They better be mad at her. They better be mad at her.
I agree.
Yeah, be mad at her. Don't be.
What I would say though, I think that we don't see enough of what Jasmine Crockett did. I hear all the time that they, we just want to hear. Ply says it. We just want to hear Joe and Kamala hit back. He says that all the time. We just want to hear him hit back. And I think our politics is different. And there was a hope and a change that came from the Obama administration, and we felt good about things. And Trump has now taken us into a more combative space. And so I think people want to see us hit back a lot of times. I think people are discouraged by the fact that you can have a Marjorie Taylor Greene running all over us and saying whatever they want to say. You can have a Ted Cruz out here just saying anything that they want to say. And then you don't have anybody on the other side hitting back and telling you what it is. And so I think our politics is just in a different place. There was a time where there was no way that, somebody who said grab them by the this and that could be the president of the United States.
Right.
I mean, they chased Howard Dean away just for yelling.
They don't uphold the family values.
Yeah. You had a very viable Gary Hart years ago, senator from Colorado, who had an affair, and he was done. Immediately after having an affair. We just had somebody who paid off a porn star for sex get convicted, and 70 million people said that's cool. I'm still gonna ride with him. And so our politics is different. And so I don't think that people are necessarily feeling discouraged by that. They just want to see like the other side meet it and give them something to cheer for, because they know they can't really get with that, but then they're not hearing anything from the other side. And that's why I think what Jasmine did really resonated with folks and really, got this thing moving.
And I also feel like if something would happen and Trump would be the president, I don't even feel like I feel like it would be getting my lick back. We would have 4 years of him trying to get his lick back. And I don't think we can just really handle that. You know what I mean? We can't handle
he said it. He said that's what he's going to do. So we
can't overlook that. Be a dictator for one day.
Yeah.
And on that one day, he's going to be getting his lick back. And we can't afford it.
And let's not forget, he wants absolute presidential immunity. Let's not leave that out. Presidential immunity. He wants that. He's arguing for it. I mean, that's what they argued at the Supreme Court. His attorney stood up there sounding like he's got a frog in his throat, saying, hey, if he wants to take out his political allies, then he should be able to do that if he was never impeached for it. These are some of the arguments that we heard during that Supreme Court hearing. And I mean, in my opinion, it's ridiculous that it was even taken up. And there would have been a time where they wouldn't even looked at that. They would have just left that, by the wayside. So we're definitely in a different time, in a different space. And this is why you going to the poll is so important. This is why you exercising your voice and sharing the conversations that we're having right now, like about this presidential immunity that he wants to do. Sharing that information with the people that that are thinking something differently. Oh, what has Biden done? Well, you want somebody up in there who thinks he should be able to just go up and take out his political opponent and nobody do anything about it? Or you can order the military to go and do these things. These are the arguments that we're hearing when we're listening to them in the Supreme Court. So, I mean, what do we want? And another quick point I wanted to make. I like the way they handled Byron Donalds this weekend. I think they did a really good job with his Jim Crow comments. I was very impressed with Hakeem Jeffries coming out immediately, coming through in the clutch. That is what we need to see. And I feel like the way they do it is tasteful. And that's what I want to see. I don't want to see them arguing like Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I do want them to, hit back. And they tore him up this weekend, and rightfully so.
Even Joy Reid's pushback was like, okay, we go back to that era. You couldn't even be married. Your family couldn't exist. Right. What exactly are we talking about?
Did y'all see Al Sharpton? He tore it up yesterday.
Yeah, Reverend Sharpton.
Yeah, he did. He tore it up yesterday.
And that's my point. I don't want us to miss out, though, on the bigger picture of why Byron said that. Because everyone's talking about it as though this is a Byron issue, that this is what Byron did. Byron is like every one of the rest of the Republicans who are sitting in Congress. They are there doing the work of a bigger plan. And when you hear people, Black people specifically, talking about we were better before Brown versus Board of Education, and trying to go back to this whole entire concept of the Jim Crow South really wasn't as bad as what people are making it out to be. That is because they are wanting to be able to plant this image so that when they repeal or reverse Brown versus Board of Education, so that when they abolish the Department of Education and they take away the Title I funds that our schools depend on to be equal in terms of what they're able to do for our children, we will say it's a good thing. And when they take that money and they give it to private schools for vouchers, Christian schools for vouchers, we won't argue against it. That's the bigger plan at play. I'm gonna be honest with you, right? Like, it's not the fact that Donald Trump is going to get his licks back or get revenge or seek retribution that in any way concerns me, because I don't care about Donald Trump. I'm concerned about the Black community. I'm concerned about women. I'm concerned about the gay community. I'm concerned about these communities, marginalized people all across America who are going to more than suffer under Project 2025 when it's implemented. And not enough of us are talking about this and making it plain as day what is written down in that plan for this nation, because that's what's going to happen in the first 90 days of the Trump administration and for the duration of this 4 years. I don't believe that the Heritage Foundation and the majority of Republicans in this country really care if it's Donald Trump, if it was Nikki Haley, if it would have been Tim Scott. All they care about is that it's a Republican who is going to be faithfully committed to implementing that plan. And that plan is for them everything they dreamed of. And for us, it's everything that we feared.
Well, I think the scary part about Project 25 as it specifically pertains to the reversal of Brown versus the Board of Education
Yeah.
is what they did in France. I don't know if I homeschool. So in France, they had their last election, they actually made homeschooling illegal out there. And when you see things like Project 2025 and you say, okay, well, we won't be able to afford private schooling, we didn't get the voucher, homeschooling is an option, it only makes me question, well, how long before now this is on our ballot? How long before it's now illegal to educate your kids on your own or educate your kids in a space that's not a private school or on a list that is approved by the Heritage Fund or the president, however that begins to work, because again, it does begin to form a dictatorship. The fact that we don't know how our government works, much less the things that are being passed in other places that can very much mirror something that could be coming down the pipeline here, is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, Project 2025 gave it a name, but Republicans have been doing this for probably the last 40 to 50 years, putting in a place, years ago, they put in a place to take state legislatures one at a time. There was a point in this country where most state legislatures were Democratic, and they just systematically went and took over state legislatures, put in a lot of funding in those elections instead, because they discovered that state legislatures, to Tiffany's point about learning about government, state legislatures create the lines. They do the gerrymandering that creates the congressional districts. Then those congressional districts can have Republicans sitting in them. And we fought to have majority Black congressional districts, but that has been used against us in some ways, because now they're packing entire communities. You look at Mississippi, my former boss, Benny Thompson, his district now spans 270 miles north to south in Mississippi, and has everything from Tunica County north all the way to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And it's basically every Black person in the state is in that district, when if it wasn't gerrymandered in that way, Mississippi has a 38% Black population. We could very easily have 2 Black representatives in the state of Mississippi. And so this is all a plan. They sit on it for 25 years and just look at how they can systematically take rights away. And that's why it's so important to stop it at the presidential level. But we have to look all up and down the ballot, including our localities, to say, okay, we want our lives to be a certain way. I think about it in Mississippi. This is the last point I'll make on this. We can give as much money as we want to the state of Mississippi. We can put billions and billions of dollars, but we have a governor there, Tate Reeves, who will not take Medicaid expansion, which came from Obamacare. And so hospitals all over the state are now closing in the most unhealthy state in the country. Our hospital, the Grenada Hospital, Grenada Lake Medical Center, UMMC Grenada, is in danger right now of closing. The hospital where I was born, the Greenwood LaFleur Hospital, is on the brink right now, because the governor just won't take Medicaid expansion because it has the Black man's name attached to it. It just will not take it. We can send, all of the money that we sent to Jackson, Mississippi, when the Jackson, Mississippi water crisis was going on. Mm-hmm. We had to find ways of getting that around the state into local control to keep it away from the governor, because it wouldn't have gone into this majority Black, the blackest city in America, if not for us doing that. And so, this is all a plan, and we have to be smart, and we have to strategize about how we push back on all of this, because it's not, people want to say, you could be out here capping for the president or doing whatever, but no, it's not about that. It's not about
I'm not capping for the president.
Yeah.
Well, that's what people say. And Trey, you make a good point, but that goes back to why we're here. People have to vote. Yeah. People in Mississippi elected Tater Tot again, right? These people came back out when they had a phenomenal alternative in Trey Presley, and they still voted for Tate Reeves, or in the case of many Black people, they just didn't vote at all. And so then they're angry about hospitals closing. The same thing is happening in your neighboring state of Louisiana, where they're sitting here seeing a hardcore press against education, where teachers' salaries are being slashed so that they can force out so many people from from the field of education to then be able to privatize the way they want to. And they're like, what's happening? We knew this would happen. Republicans told us what they would do, but yet and still, we did not get them out of there. We put them in office. We put Landry in office in Louisiana, and now we're suffering the consequences. Republicans are telling us now what they're going to do in America in 2025 if Donald Trump is elected.
Yes.
We don't have a choice but to vote, or we're going to suffer the same consequences that we're seeing in Mississippi and Louisiana all across the country. And I know many of you, like me, live in a red state because I live in Georgia, but we also don't accept the funding from the Affordable Care Act. But we have a responsibility to ensure that what's happening to us on a local level does not happen to us on a national level, because those national protections are the only thing that stands between us and, in many cases, absolute ruin.
Yeah, like you look at pre-clearance when the Supreme Court got rid of the pre-clearance requirement of the Voting Rights Act, for instance. And so states like Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and like pre-clearance is basically during the Voting Rights Act, in order to make sure that things remain equal and that people had their right to vote. States who have a history of discrimination would have to get pre-clearance from the Department of Justice in order to make any kind of changes to their voting processes, right? But as soon as the pre-clearance went away, then you had states like Georgia, you had states like Mississippi, start to cut the budgets of local elections commissioners. You had them taking machines out of certain places that were primarily Black. You had, and so all of this makes a difference. And I think sometimes people say, "Oh, we survived Trump once, we can survive Trump again." I don't know. I don't know that that's the case.
I don't know.
This is not that same beast.
Yeah, it's different.
When he was first in office, he didn't know what he was doing. If you saw him on election night, he was surprised. He was shocked that he had won himself. And so he had no transition team. He had nothing together in terms of thinking about this. And so now
we even went through the era of Fire Fridays, where he was firing staff members every Friday. They was out of there. There was no and I said this all the time. The thing that people liked about Trump the first time was they were so over politicians. And Donald Trump was not that. It took us back to the Ronald Reagan. This is our movie theater president. This is our actor president. It took people back to those days. We are now voting for a man who understands politics on a level that he did not understand it 4 years ago. He knows the game. He knows way more rules and loopholes and things that you can get away with. Not to mention, he will have more seats to fill. Lifetime appointments to hand out. It's not just about just him and the next 4 years. We are talking about changes that could very well impact our great grands.
Yeah, and that's the part is that it's the people around him. You can compare when people tell me about President Biden being old. I'm just one. I know that he's very sharp and he's great, but his age is his age. And that's something that we have to go with. But what's important,
similar to Trump's age as well.
Yeah, which is very similar.
Come on.
But what he does understand is that he has to put really good people around him. I like to think I was one of those folks for my time working in the White House. And he has people who understand, who get it, and who do that work around him. If Trump comes back into office, he won't feel the same way that he felt last time, where, I got to get, this person who's reasonable and this person over here to be reasonable to be the Secretary of Defense. And I got to have somebody who's corporate over here to do this. He can do whatever he wants, and he can appoint anybody who he wants. And if there's a Republican Congress, they will confirm anyone he wants. And so you could have very extreme people making the rules about how we live our lives day to day. And I just don't, I don't want that for my family. I don't want that for my friends. I don't want that for anybody in my community.
Real quick, I know that you're going to have to leave.
I do. I have to go pick up the little one from her birthday party.
I just want to thank you for being here, and we'll come back. I'll speak with you later. So thank you for being here for us.
Yes, thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Elle.
I'll see you guys later.
But go ahead.
No, I was done. I was saying I don't
Okay.
want Trump to be president for me, you, or anybody else.
Right. Right.
I think the part that's missing from this entire conversation is that when people sit here and say that they like Trump better, they have to also explain what exactly did Trump do, particularly for Black people, to make us want to actually vote for him. Because I can't really name anything other than him taking credit for things that Black legislators already done, particularly what Democrats were doing already. I can pinpoint to the things that, as you were stating on that list, that President Joe Biden had a hand in. Even when it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act, capping the cost of insulin for seniors, it primarily protects Black people, particularly knowing the fact that diabetes disproportionately affects the Black community. But not only with that, in the Inflation Reduction Act, when they passed the American Rescue Plan that was supposed to give $4.5 billion to Black farmers solely, in the Inflation Reduction Act, there was an actual resolution in there to where they could file for discrimination funding under the USDA, which was available all the way up until earlier this year. And the problem that we're having is a lot of people didn't have access to this information. They're not knowing that all of these things are available to them. And all we have to do is put it in hands of the voters so they can see what's actually being done. I think the problem is we don't give ourselves enough credit to gloat. As Plies has always said, we need to brag about what we're talking about or what we're doing. We never talked about how many $1.5 billion in 2023 alone to small Black businesses, solely only. I'm talking about in just small minority businesses. We gave that in SBA loans, but nobody talks about that.
But
If we
Kenny,
have all these resources available, why aren't we giving them, putting it in the hands or reaching out to content creators so they can tell people where they can apply for these loans, where they can apply for these grants? I think the biggest messenger and the biggest advocate is the people who are closest to the pain, particularly people who have benefited from it. So my suggestion is what I've also seen. Joe Biden just did a video of somebody a Black man with his two sons who were actually beneficiaries of the student loan debt forgiveness. He got $90,000 worth of student loan debt forgiveness, which now he's trying to reinvest into his children's education as they grow up. We need to hear those stories. We need to hear those things so that way people can actually actually have a face in front of the message.
And I will say this, I've said this before, and for reasons to have this conversation. Like if you follow, like I follow Kenny, I follow Zach and Tiffany and Trey. And so I may not be as versed as you all, but I know what's happening, right? Versus somebody that's not following the White House or the president and they don't know. And so when you speak these things, they were like, well, I don't, like, well, how did that happen? When did that happen? Well, I don't have time to run that down to you. But with these instant news cycles that they receive, I think that's a big problem too. Like, I don't know if people are reaching out, trying to find out who they can follow or what they can do. It's gonna make a difference, right? It makes a big difference. And I know that for me, when I see all the jobs that they've had, a lot of people don't even know about that.
But the part of also, when you start asking these rhetorical questions, have you even tried to research the answer? I mean, part of the onus does have to go with voters because we're grown. Come on now. Yeah, I'm always going to hold voters accountable because we are grown and we're supposed to be grown enough to actually research. If we can figure out where we can buy the newest Jordans, we should be able to figure out how these politicians are affecting our lives on a daily. We should be able to do just that bare minimum.
It's a two-way street, right? Like we have to make it easy for people to get to the information and get to the research or get to the, the accomplishments that the administration has had. Just like you mentioned, Jordans, they make it easy for folks by marketing and like putting them in places where putting them on people they think will be influencers. And so we have to put that message out in places where people will listen to it and from people who they'll listen to. Like I said at the beginning, it's going to come from micro influencers. It's going to come from people who felt it. We just did an event in Philadelphia when we launched Black Voters for Biden, where we not only did it with the local Black chamber, but the president of the Black chamber had just received $260,000 in student loan debt. And I only learned about, and she was introducing the president that day. And I only learned about that because I was talking to her beforehand, getting her ready for her remarks. She was like, oh, I wasn't going to say anything about it, but I also received. I said, what? You weren't going to say nothing about that? This is the reason that we're here. And so we have to go suss out all those people, all that information, and put them on the front lines because they're not going to believe it because it comes from one of us. We're with the campaign. They're going to believe it because it comes from somebody who they've developed a line of trust with. Going back around to why each of you are important is because y'all have developed in your own platforms a line of trust and understanding with your people. And so, Meal, while you might not have all of the necessary information, people trust you enough to at least believe, well, let me look further into it because Billy Chun said so. And so let me at least do that. And so that's just a little, give us that little bit of opening the door, and it's our responsibility to then come in behind it.
Yeah, I just want the awareness. I want people to be able to understand that there have been things that have been done. Even if they haven't seen them, or they have a little blurb, or they come real quick and listen to 5 seconds of someone who's speaking about politics. Like, just to know that there is only one option. Like, the next 4 years could be hell. Like you said, the first 4 years with Trump, he didn't know what he was doing. So he kind of had to go with the Obama book a little bit, and then take this out and let me use this. But now he's on this rampage, and I think people need to understand he has had a fire lit under his ass, and he is ready. And I don't think we can handle that. People talking about SNAP benefits on here. They're talking about
cutting social services.
And it's too much, because you can't, like, it's summertime, right? And if you got kids at home and you can't afford a babysitter, you gotta feed them. And people that are not making enough to feed their kids, they need that help. And you have Congress people who don't even care anything about that.
We had multiple looming government shutdowns. They voted against everything, every initiative that would reinvest in American people, particularly the Build Back Better plan. $1.7 trillion plan, which would have gave us paid family leave, would have expanded the child tax credit that lifted Black children out of poverty. I mean, we would have got dental. We got a lot of things from that would have reinvested in us. So as people continues to talk about how much money is being sent overseas, $1.7 trillion is a lot more money than we could have ever sent overseas. But that was all in a Democratic bill.
Right. Cinnamon Swirl says, can the panel speak on Project 2025? We've kind of talked about that a little bit, but is there something that is just really poignant where you can just flip somebody's idea? Or, because from what I read, it's like it has nothing to do with us as Democrats. It has nothing to do with us as Black people. It's reversing everything that has been done at this point. That's what I got from it.
I actually started doing. I'm making a series of TikTok videos that I'm gonna post around Independence Day. But now I'm thinking I need to post them earlier and probably do it instead for Juneteenth. And so the focus of the videos is how Project 2025 impacts the Black community, women, and LGBTQI plus rights. And those are, like, I broke it down into 3 different parts. I'm also going to then take all 3 parts and put them together on one video on YouTube. But here's a summarization real quick, and you guys can fact check me at the end. But Project 2025 is an almost 1,000 page document broken down into 4 parts that you can read for yourself on Google. If you Google Project 2025 PDF, the whole document comes up. This has been done by the Heritage Foundation and 70 other conservative, right-wing leaning organizations who all came together, and they funded their plan for America that some would say creates a a nation that lives up to what they say is America's promise to be a truly Christian nation. But when they say Christian, it means a Christian nation in the image that they see it, not in the image that I would think that I would say is based on the true biblical teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, in this plan, they look at all the different things in America that they feel don't belong or is not in service to this vision, and they look at how they can repeal it through executive actions. Project 2025 is not about the Senate. It's not about the House of Representatives. It's not even about the Supreme Court. It's about the president. And these are the things that they have laid out in the plan that the president can do himself through executive actions and orders in 2025 with it when he takes office. There's an entire pillar of the plan that's like a 90-day plan that he can do within the first 90 days of being there. And they talk about how in that plan within the executive branch, they have the opportunity to eliminate many parts of the executive functions of our government, including the Department of Education, which ensures equal access to funding, and that would be eliminated. They also have in the plan where they're going to disassemble the powers of the Department of Justice. So when things are happening in a state like Louisiana or a state like Mississippi, an example being Mississippi, I'll use Mississippi as an example, where we had the 6 police officers in Brandon, Mississippi, who had gone on what I would consider to be a mass serial killing spree of Black people that ultimately ended with them being put only, I think, 20 years in jail. That situation got attention and support from the Department of Justice. Had it not had intervention from the federal government, they probably would not have faced the consequences they finally faced. Well, in Project 2025, those powers will be gone because certain words like diversity, equity, inclusion, civil rights, all these things would no longer be even allowed to be a function of the federal government. So those are some pieces of it. But and also in terms of like women, how they look at women, how they look at women's rights, it's not only about ensuring that access to abortion care, bodily autonomy, reproductive justice doesn't exist in the country. They also are looking at how they are redefining divorce, ensuring that you can only get a divorce when it's like no more no-fault divorces can occur. They're looking at how they're going to readjust SNAP benefits and TANF benefits to find a way to like limit that down. Like it's like a ridiculous amount of money you get now per person in most states. I think it's like $6.60 per day to eat when you're like maybe even less than I'm that's what I'm recalling because they have it all in the plan, but they're looking at, creating more qualifiers in order to get this money, which of course includes you being forced to work. When many people who receive these benefits are on disability and they're not able to work anyway. So, because it's really all about getting all the funding and all the leftover funds and resources that would be saved in Project 2025 and then reallocating them to serve their purpose. In regards to LGBTQIA plus Americans, if you are trans, non-binary, intersex, or you have a family member or a friend who falls in those categories, it's considered to be a mental disorder or designation off the bat. And of course, there can only be marriage between a biological male and a biological female. Anyone else has no right to the protected government sanctions of marriage. All of that's in the plan. It's all spelled out and it's plain as day. And when they do this in 2025, if Donald Trump is reelected, they will be able to say, you could have read it, you knew we were going to do it because it's all public domain.
Right. That's enough. That's enough right there. Because that is scary. It reads like a nightmare.
Well, and it's happening in states. This gives it a name again, but it's happening in states. I think in Mississippi, especially, I'm just sensitive to it. But it's like whenever a question comes up of how can we treat people worse? How can we make people's lives harder? The Republican legislature and the governor tend to try to do that. So whether it's not taking Medicaid expansion, meaning hospitals are closing, whether it's taking away, free summer feeding programs from communities and from schools, anything that seems to make life harder for people like us, I think that they tend to do that. And that's what, from my reading, encapsulates a lot of, the Project 2025 is, you're looking at trying to take away agencies that have historically helped us, whether it be the Commerce Department, the Department of Education, other things that they just have beef with because they want to use it to their advantage. So that's it. I think while I'm never a proponent of trying to scare people into doing anything, I think people should be knowledgeable about it. But then there's also very important reasons why you should vote, for something. And I think voting for continuing to do more and more student loan debt forgiveness. On the whole, it's been $16 billion in student loan debt. I see people in the comments talking about how much they've been forgiven or they know somebody who's been forgiven. I think it goes forward to, even through the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're doing something called reconnecting communities. And that is essentially going and rehabbing the basically the infrastructural discrimination that communities have suffered. You take the Greenwood community in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that suffered the horrible massacre in 1921. Well, that community was broken up when they put a highway through the middle of Greenwood. And so, what this funding does from the Department of Transportation through the bipartisan infrastructure plan is it helps to rebuild and prop up those communities like Greenwood that suffered because the government specifically and intentionally discriminated against a community by putting the infrastructure through them, whether it was taking property through eminent domain in order to build a highway through that community. And so I think we have a reason also to vote for a continuation of the policies that are being put in place right now that are helping people all over the country.
And when Trey said it's being implemented, I can't. I yes, it is being implemented, right? Like every single Republican elected official had to sign off to say that they will work to implement Project 2025. This playbook has, in pieces of it, has been put all over states and is always a part of the Republican agenda every legislative session. So when your lawmakers go to the state capitol that you've elected, sit down, the Republicans there already know what their plans are. They already know we're going to use the issue of men and women who happen to be trans who are playing who want to play sports as a issue that we're going to amplify, even though that's less than 1% of the population, and we're going to really make this the divided this big issue. We're going to put it in play, and we're going to keep working and keep working to get these things approved, so we can see what works in terms of messaging and what doesn't work in terms of messaging. An example would be even the fact that these conservatives do this beyond the United States. They have looked at what worked in Venezuela, where they were able to make being trans or intersex or non-binary a mental health designation. So that is currently happening in Venezuela. Conservatives from America helped fund that movement because they wanted to know, how do we get this across and how do we get the people of a nation to support it? They are extremely strategic and they're extremely resourced, and they have a whole lot of time and a whole lot of energy to ensure that certain Americans that they don't like don't have rights.
That's so scary.
And it's not a coincidence that certain things happen from state to state to state. When the governor of Florida does something, and then the governor of Georgia does it, and then the governor of Louisiana, governor of Texas does a particular thing, then the governor of Mississippi does it. It's because somebody is sitting down and giving them the playbook and saying, "Hey, here's our goals for the next period of time." I think for them, Donald Trump represents a great distraction because he can be up here drawing all the attention and waving his hands in the air and getting, going to court every day and saying all this and that. He is a vessel in which, they're going to take their conservative policies. I think, I don't know if it was Zach who mentioned it earlier, but it doesn't matter who it is, but he makes a great vessel because he has 100% name recognition because he's a reality show star. He gained fame in the 80s from, pretty much deplorable deals.
Fraud.
Yeah, and fraud.
From fraud.
He made in his, and so he has a name, and so that's perfect. He is the vessel by which they take these conservative policies. And on the other side, we have to push back against that because it's strategic and it's connected. And if we don't, we'll look up and we'll be overrun by these strategies that they're putting together.
Well, does Too Raw, Too Real, do you have something you want to say? We're coming to an end at this time.
I think the only thing I have to say is I think a lot of us need to just start just boasting about what Biden has accomplished. Again, I know a lot of people want to just use the Project 25, like to Trey's point, fear mongering. But at the end of the day, yes, these things are reality, but we also have to speak on the things that actually has happened within this administration that has deeply impacted the Black community and needs to continue. I mean, we cannot keep moving one step forward and then moving 10 steps back. Every time we move forward, it seems like we always have to move backwards. That doesn't always have to happen. I'm looking at all the things that's been done within the Biden-Harris administration and actually being able to uplift Black people. I don't know if you guys even heard about the new announcement on how they're actually going to look at medical debt. And I already know from a personal experience when it comes to medical debt, somebody who's literally scared to go to the hospital knowing that there's something wrong because they don't want to incur more debt because they don't want to go backwards, scared, just playing Russian roulette with their life right now because they don't
Yeah.
want to incur anything else. That's something big that Black people need to start looking at. How many people right now have been scared to go to the hospital because they did not have the ability to pay for that bill? And that's not going to affect your credit score. Attacking that and being able to build up that debt to income ratio, acquiring wealth for Black people, trying to close that racial wealth gap is a big thing that we've been talking about for years. And now that we're finally seeing it tackled, why would we want to throw that away when we're finally actually attacking it? When it comes to maternal health, recently, before there was only 3 other states that offered postpartum health, postpartum Medicaid health care for people who literally just had a child, and it was only like 3 states. Now there's 46 states thanks to the Biden-Harris administration that's tackling maternal mortality. We know Black women are more likely to die after childbirth than anybody else. Why are we not talking about these things? 46 states just adopted that.
Tiffany?
Most of these things are impacting people of color, particularly Black people, Black women, Black men.
Yes. Tiffany?
Go vote.
Zach? Uh-oh.
I was responding to Anne Marie, who just made me like almost lose it on this discussion. Okay, I almost lost it when because she just said, "How you gonna vote from Russia to Kingston 73?" And I was typing in the chat, screaming. But I want to say, of course, vote. But I think we should. This is a great conversation, Billy Sean. You have to do it again. Double D, you need to need to have a Black Written News Live ASAP. And I know that we're not monetized, like we need to be monetized, because I saw it on the TikTok. But what we gonna do is we can do every time like a fundraiser or something to keep these platforms going and to make it worth your time, because we need to reach all the audiences that we can reach. And so also, if anyone free, Kenny, if you can give like maybe 10 minutes afterwards, I would love for anyone who's free to then come to TikTok, or my TikTok is activist, where I want to continue, because I want to talk to you specifically about what you just said about highlighting the benefits of the Biden camp, of what Biden has done. So please vote.
Right. Trey?
We've talked a lot about the negative and about the sort of scary part of this, but I feel very good about the future. I feel very good about what the Biden-Harris administration has done. We haven't talked about a lot of the things, but billions of dollars in support for historically Black colleges and universities. More Black businesses have been able to been created now than ever before. Got $10,000 in mortgage relief for first-time home buyers. Like, people's lives are substantially better because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris coming to office with the people who they brought with them. And we got a really great story to tell. I hope, my ask here to anybody who's listening who would be concerned or have questions is, one, to be open to the conversation. Give us an opportunity to talk about it and talk through it with you, because just to say you're negative on it, you're down on it, what has Joe Biden done for us? I think he's done a bunch, but you have to be open to listening and taking the information in. And so I think we've got a great story to tell. I think as we start to turn towards the summer and then into the convention and otherwise, we're going to be able to tell that story. But we have to be telling it in the right places. And so this is just the beginning. So my commitment, Millie Chun, is that if, when you're hosting these kind of conversations, if you want other people from the campaign, other people from the administration who can talk about this kind of thing, I'll be happy to help to get other folks to this platform. I'll be happy to have those conversations about financing in spaces like this, because it's important that we get our messaging on advertisement and everything else into these spaces. And so I appreciate everybody on this call today, because it's been great. It's illuminating for me. And but yeah, y'all go vote. Like, people fought and died for us to go vote. I heard the worst conversation on the Joe Budden podcast recently, where they were just like, y'all going to vote or not? And they're just like, nah. And while that attitude is, I hate to hear that. I heard him. I came back on another podcast I was listening to today, where they were like, well, we got to give Joe we got to give Joe Biden props because he took $80,000 of student debt and forgave it for this person who I know. And so, people's minds can be changed if they are able to get the information and see how it connects to their lives. I think now, in past generations, it was we have to do this because it is our duty as citizens to come and do. But now people have to see what's in it for them, and that's fine. We just have to be able to tell them what's in it for you. And it's a lot in it for you if you participate in the process. When you don't participate in the process, like politics is going to happen no matter what. Like politics is going to do you if you don't do politics. So saying you don't do politics isn't acceptable anymore. We have to all participate in this process if we want to get something out of it.
Millie Chung, can I make one brief statement?
Yeah,
And Trey,
go
because
ahead.
Trey, you keep saying great things, brother, and it keeps making me think like I gotta say this. Why are we as Black people letting uneducated, whether it be through a self-education process or if it's through a formal process like what Trey went through at Tougaloo, why are we letting uneducated celebrities have any say whatsoever in what we do? Now, it's fine for them to talk about what they're going to do, but we have given them way too much power in their platforms to influence the broader Black community. I don't see brown people letting their celebrities dictate how they vote. I don't see Asian American Pacific Islander community allowing their celebrities to dictate what they do in terms of how they vote. But we're letting people like Candace Owens, who has no formal education. We're letting people like Leonard McKelvey, Charlamagne the Gadfly, with no formal education, Joe, but all these people that do not have any learned experiences have way too much influence on platforms to dictate what happens in our community at the cost of our academics and our intellectuals and our politicians. I don't know why we're doing it, but we need to deplatform these folks.
I will say this as a former teacher, I don't know how much the education system can handle missing. We can't, they can't miss anymore. Like they just can't take anything else away. That's enough to think about your children, think about your grandchildren, think about their education. Their, you are going to have to become a teacher so you can just kind of teach them about who they actually are. So this is very important. And my student loans were forgiven. So I mean it's a real thing, people, and this is why everybody on this panel is just amazing, and I appreciate you all being here. And I want to do this again at the end of the month, so I'll be in contact with you because I want to do at least twice this month and in July and maybe once in August because it's so important. And I'll get with you all and everything. And I just want to thank all of you for being here today. Thank you for listening, your comments, your questions and everything. And I hope they were answered. I hope you have better understanding. That's the big thing that we want here. We just want you to understand how important this is for us, for us Black people, right? We all we got. So we got to go vote. So thank you all for being here, Millie Crew. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panel. If y'all sit back real quick, I'll speak to you all real quick and then we'll go. I want to thank everybody for coming. Y'all have a good afternoon. It's your girl, Millie Chun, and I'm out.